First of all, I want to go ahead and give a big congratulations to one of my closest friends that I've ever made on Twitch, TyrannoCyrusRex, for reaching the partnership status on Twitch that he rightfully deserved after working hard at it for so many years. As a bit of a celebration of sorts for this particular accomplishment, I want to go ahead and release this interview that I did with him for one of my university classes, which was an interviewing technique class. Now, I want to go ahead and give a bit of a disclaimer. The thing with this particular interview is that I'm going to pretend like I'm not a streamer and that I don't know anything about the Twitch or YouTube sim racing stream community, because this whole assignment was based around networking, but your boy already networks with people to begin with, and this class was really stressful and I wanted to do something fun. So I went ahead and asked Cyrus to be my interviewee, gave him the ground rules for that, and we pretended like we didn't know each other, but ultimately it was still a very fun discussion that we had. In this interview, I kind of talked to him about, the beginnings of his career, what it's like now, and some of the personal stuff, like work-life balance, that kind of thing. So the footage in the background is just Gran Turismo 7, me grinding out my second account so that I can go ahead and get the missions done, and I can get more cars to do more daily races because I'm not risking my main DNA account. Why the hell would I do that, especially in these lobbies that are very mixed on PS4? Regardless, hope you guys enjoy this interview, and with that being said, here it is. Okay then, so let's go ahead and get started. So I'm here with Cyrus Cross, who is an affiliate for Twitch.tv and also a member of the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule for this once again. So I wanted to go ahead and start by asking, why was broadcasting the field you decided to pursue?
So I feel like that I've always been kind of you know what, I like attention. I like telling jokes, I like making people laugh. I spent a lot of time working at a martial arts studio, and I was the first person that people would see and talk to and interact with. And so it was a really busy martial arts studio. And when I quit, I had this idea that I really wanted to get into streaming. One, because I just love playing video games, but two, it uses all the skills that I developed at the martial arts studio. When it came to, memorizing people's names, having, meaningful conversations with dozens of people, sometimes at a time, and entertaining in general. And if I get to do that while playing video games, it just seemed like the very best thing that I could possibly do for myself.
Especially with how everything's kind of taken off with this whole video game streaming platform, and that's really cool. So would you say that's like the most influential part of your decision is just the martial arts studio experience?
It was, so I think that really gave me the skills necessary to make it happen. I grew up a lot at the martial arts studio and through my 20s, and it helped me realize how much I really do enjoy entertaining people and just being social with people. But doing it through, while also getting to play video games, which is my favorite activity. It just seemed like the perfect combination of things that I'd love to do for the rest of my life.
Fantastic. So how did you get your start?
It was funny. I actually, before I even quit the job at the martial arts studio, I had heard about people who had actually, I heard that there are more people than you might imagine who make a living entirely off of streaming. And so there are thousands of people who your average person has never even heard of, who completely make a living just by broadcasting. And so when I found that out, I was like, I need to try a little bit. And so I got early access to my favorite racing sim, Gran Turismo, and I started streaming that just on nights after I'd work. And not only did I get a pretty good response from that, I also just really, 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 really enjoyed it. And when I took a look at other platforms available and talked to more people who had actually made some money off of it, I realized that if I had the opportunity to really focus my time and energy on it, I thought that I could become successful at it.
Wow, so an early access to one of your favorite video games is basically what helped you get your start. So how would you say that experience shaped the person you are today?
Oh, wow. I feel like a lot of things in my life kind of have been leading to this point. This is essentially, I'm doing what I've always wanted to. Since I was a kid, I wanted to be a stuntman. I knew that, and I also knew that I wanted to be able to play as many video games as I wanted to. For a big portion of my life when I was younger, I essentially only had video games to keep me company. I liked sports enough I didn't like team sports. There were some activities I liked doing, but I had really terrible asthma, and I also couldn't afford to go out and do most of the activities that I really wanted. And while video games have always been kind of spendy, um, I knew that if I had convinced my family to spend what little money we had on video games, then that's the kind of thing that would keep me busy for years. I mean, I play a game for an entire year, and so with who I was as a kid, and all of the aspirations that I had, I made it as a stuntman in my late 20s, and I realized that that's a sustainable thing. I can be a stuntman with whatever other day job that I have, and I realized that if I want to be able to play video games as much as possible and have like a rich, fulfilling life outside of that, then what I would need to do is make it so I can play video games as my as my my main thing. And so I realized that, like, being a professional gamer doesn't even guarantee that you're going to get paid from it. But being a broadcaster is just, it's not necessarily an untapped market. It's just that you have to have a really specific set of skills in order to do it. And I felt that I had that. And so I realized that all of these desires that I had as a kid would all culminate and allow me to pursue this if I was given the opportunity. And I spoke with my wife, and the deal was kind of that I supported her through her nursing school. She became a nurse, and so we're taking a shot at seeing if I can support myself eventually while she supports us to pursue it. And yeah, so it's essentially all of my childhood dreams wrapped into one, with all of the skills that I learned at the martial arts studio, and it all ended up just perfectly timing and coming together.
That's amazing. I love how hearing that particular beginning kind of like rolled out and definitely influenced who you are today as a person. So
Yeah.
tell me about the hardest point of your beginnings.
Oh wow. I want to say, like, this is this is, I think the hardest part was the years. I shouldn't. So I knew that I'm going to take a step back. I wanted to be able to make money off of video games for many years before I ended up quitting my job to become a Twitch streamer. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it. I had tried to make edited videos. I tried to get attention and notoriety online for my drifting, for my Call of Duty gameplay, but creating videos and doing that kind of thing hadn't ever really worked out. And I just realized I completely lost sight of your question. What was the? I just started going off on a tangent again. What was the question?
The hardest point of your
Hardest
beginnings.
point.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, and so I realized that I was so when I was talking about creating, trying to make content from Call of Duty and drifting, I was doing all of that like at the infancy of YouTube, and I was just trying to upload YouTube videos when I had the opportunity to do so. I didn't really know much about it, and so I think the hardest part was actually probably the 5 to 10 years leading up to the point where I realized that I had to really pour everything I had into it, and then attaining the resources necessary. Now, I don't want to talk about I don't want to call my wife a resource, but 100% without my wife supporting me financially through this, it would have essentially been impossible. I wouldn't be able to find the time to train to be a stuntman, to work full time, nurture a relationship, keep a social life, and be a content creator all at the same time. So I guess the hardest thing for me was getting to the point eventually where I could focus 100% of my time on it. I know a lot of people who try to do content creation on top of their jobs and their relationships, and I don't even know how they do it. And I've seen people do it successfully, but to me, that would be the hardest thing. And so it was the time leading up to the point where I got to really quit my job and focus on it. It was the hardest thing, trying to gather the resources and figure out exactly what I would need in order to be successful.
Sounds kind of like a snowball effect, essentially. Like when it's hard to get that big snowball rolling down the hill, but once it does, then it just kind of takes off from there. My follow-up to question to that was going to be, how did you get through it? But it sounds like your wife was a big a supporting role in that, so that's really wonderful. So with the hard points of your beginnings out the way, tell me about the breakthrough moments of your career.
Oh man, so one thing that I did about 7 years ago, when in my my slow pursuit before I actually really dove into the streaming, was I took part in a competition in Gran Turismo where the best Gran Turismo players per region get an opportunity to try to become a real life race car driver. And in 2014, I got the opportunity to compete for that. It's called GT Academy, and so they made a TV show about it. They flew 32 of us to New York to compete, and then furthermore, 12 finalists got to go to England. And I unfortunately didn't make it to finals, but even just making it to the semifinals, the regional finals, was enough to give me a lasting reputation within the community. And so it was probably a few months after I started streaming that more and more people would come in and more people realized that I was indeed streaming. And so when I started getting bigger names from the community that I had met in passing or people that I hadn't actually even known coming into my stream and helping and supporting me, it kind of blew up from there. And I think one of the really, really big moments was when Gran Turismo, the official account, shared one of my gameplay moments from one of my streams and blasted out to all of their supporters and all the social media platforms. It was shortly after that where I saw a huge rise in number. And then, like you mentioned before, the snowball effect, all of that momentum just kept gaining more and more momentum to the point where now I'm the most watched individual on Twitch for Gran Turismo specifically. And I think that has a lot to do with the GT Academy back in 2014, and then people realizing then that I'm also streaming now on Twitch.
That's incredible. I mean, I heard of the GT Academy back in the day, but I, couldn't take part. I was too young then. But in terms of the actual broadcasting side, it sounds like that one of those breakthrough moments for the broadcasting was mainly when the official Gran Turismo page shared your content.
Yeah.
Explain the feelings that you had when that particular moment happened.
Oh man, so there's only one other thing in my life that can kind of compare. And the craziest thing is that when I became a stuntman, it was my childhood hero, the person who inspired me in a random trip to my state, happened to see me training and gave me the opportunity to become a stuntman. When the person who has inspired you the most to pursue what you're pursuing validates what you're doing, I thought it would be a once in a lifetime moment, but then when Gran Turismo shared my Gran Turismo footage, it was the exact same feeling. When someone or something that inspires you to do something then recognizes you in that, it is an unbelievable feeling.
Those are both just amazing things to compare. If you don't mind me asking, what stuntman noticed you in the studio?
His name's Ernie Reyes Jr. So he was in Ninja Turtles 2. He was the pizza boy, and he was also one of the stuntmen in the Ninja Turtles costumes for the first movie.
No way.
He was the tiny kid in the movie The Last Dragon from the 80s. He was in Surf Ninjas. He fought The Rock in The Rundown. If you liked action movies in the 90s, you've seen him. So it was him, and his dad was my instructor's instructor, and his dad has a franchise school within that was actually a competitor of the martial arts studio I worked at, but we're on friendly terms, and so it's Ernie Reyes Jr. He's a legend in the community.
That's amazing. I'm so thankful that you shared that because that's just really wonderful insight.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you talked about how you started this whole broadcasting independent venture during the infancy of kind of like, these kind of platforms during the early days of the internet. How has the industry changed since you got started?
Man, wow. So like looking back when I very first wanted to get into it, I didn't even realize streaming was that much of a thing. I actually remember the very first time I saw a YouTube video, and it was less than a year after that I then tried to upload to YouTube to get my own attention after seeing other things. At that point, I didn't even know streaming was a thing. In the 10 years or so that followed that, streaming became a little bit more mainstream, but people really didn't quite understand the level that it was going to get to. I think only like even just the past couple of years with the pandemic, it's changed drastically. I believe during the pandemic, more people started streaming than any other 1 year period, I believe. And so things changed rapidly in the 10 years leading to that. But then when the pandemic hit, not only did you have people who had way more time at home to do it themselves, but you also had more people to view. So while there was an oversaturation for a moment of people trying to get out there and get the attention on themselves, there's also an oversaturation of people who were wanting to watch it too. So just within the past 2 years, streaming, I think, has really, really, really blown up. And I believe that the other side of that, the video creation, the content creation, where it's on-demand videos, has also blown up. in a huge way.
My follow-up question to that was going to be about telling me about the new avenues that arise from these changes for those looking in. But it sounds like to me that, like, as you mentioned at the end there, like on-demand videos and, more accessibility for content creators, especially during COVID, for new content creators, I should say, like I've always been that kind of person who's thought that, you kind of need all this professional equipment and stuff. But, with another interview that I did previously, I learned that wasn't really the case. So
yeah.
Which is really cool.
There are people who are more successful than me that don't have nearly they don't have a full-on professional looking camera. They stream directly from their console. Like there's so many, it's really interesting. There are lots of different reasons people watch. And I believe you asked about, what was the exact last question? You asked about like the opportunities for?
Yeah, the new avenues, but you kind of answered that within the question about how the industry has changed since we got started.
So it's becoming more legitimate too. So there are two really big, specifically within. So this is just within my niche market. There are two people, Jimmy Broadbent and Super GT, who both made a name for themselves for streaming their own simulation racing content. Who have now gone on to not only commentate for actual professional racing series, but also drive their own race cars and have racing. Have the opportunity to drive race cars because of who they are and how like the following that they've built within that. And so, I think right now in the past couple of years, there's never been more opportunities for the legitimacy of broadcasting your gameplay.
Oh, that's incredible! I have to look more into Jimmy. You said Jimmy Broadbent, and who was the other person?
A guy called Super GT, Steve Brown.
Steve Brown. Okay, got it. Cool. Thank you so much. So now that we talked about your beginnings and have a better understanding of it, I'd like to move on to questions related to skills related to the work itself.
Yeah.
So explain the preparation process prior to going on air.
Okay, so for you got to be awake. You got to be ready to give a lot of energy to people, and you've got to be ready to split your energy. You got to kind of know what you're going to be doing, and then be prepared to do a completely different thing while you're doing it. So especially for sim racing. So I know like a lot of my streams are just casual racing where I just try to have fun with the racing, not actually compete.
Okay.
And when I do that, it's a lot less preparation end on the racing, but I still have to be prepared to interact with all of the people. I've got to make sure I look good. I've got to make sure I've got all my lighting equipment set. I've got to make sure I've got all my sound levels balanced, and that's kind of an ongoing thing when you try to introduce more people into the stream as well, allowing their voice chat when you're playing games with them. So I think the hardest part is probably audio balance, and then luckily with streaming software, and I'm lucky enough now to have an entire room dedicated to this. Before, when I had to use a shared living room to do it, there's a lot of, I guess, a lot more random events that could happen. Trying to make sure that no one else gets in the broadcast or messes something up for the broadcast, like trips over one of my lights or something like that. But so now, luckily, so it's really interesting because like if you have someone else come in, or if someone like my living room is also attached to my kitchen, so if someone wants to clean, I also had to try to set up my audio to a point where it doesn't pick up everything in the kitchen, but it still picks me up clearly. And then lighting can be an issue with a shared room too, because if someone turns on a light you hadn't planned for, it could really mess up the lighting that you've got for yourself and that kind of stuff. But I think now that I have my own stream room, really I just have to be mentally prepared. I've got all of my settings saved. Nothing changes because it's a controlled environment, and I've got an overlay for every type of game that I play, and so it's all set now. It's a lot more difficult for people who don't have their own kind of dedicated space to it.
You mentioned the whole like interruptions and possible things that could go wrong while you're broadcasting. So I want to ask a follow-up question to that in particular before I ask you another question about the preparation process, because I think that's an interesting part. How do you keep your emotions in check when a situation like that happens?
That's so knowing it, at first it's harder, but knowing that anything can happen, like knowing like back then when I had just the open space, knowing that anyone can just walk in at any given time, you kind of just prepare yourself with jokes or with things. Or one of the big things is that people watching aren't going to care that much, but your perception of how you appear can kind of magnify any effect. And so knowing that something can happen beforehand is a big part of it. And honestly, it sounds silly, but and a lot of people I think a lot of people don't understand how difficult it is putting yourself out there with dozens of people potentially watching you, trying to both maintain your cool while you're potentially playing a competitive game, but also trying to just not show when a mistake upsets you that's really tough. And just being mentally prepared for anything to happen, telling yourself that one, it's okay if something does happen, and two, thinking of something crazy happening as an inevitability rather than a possibility is a really big part of it. If you go into it with the attitude of thinking, I hope nothing happens, then when something happens, you can be shocked. But if you go into it thinking something bad's going to happen, we're going to be prepared for it. Here are the different things I can do for these situations that might have arisen. And now it's just experience. Now I've been through pretty much everything that could possibly happen on stream, and so it's not. So now with the experience and going in knowing that I have made it through pretty much anything bad that can happen, and I can do it again is a big help.
That's a really good way of looking at it, especially if you've been through so much. Because I can't, I'm not a streamer, but I can imagine that if that happened to me, I would have to be like, okay, just like any regular job, where you have to keep your emotions in check, you have to find that balance. So going back to the preparation process, you mentioned all these different ways you get prepared. How do you prioritize what gets prepared the most?
Wow, that's a good question. Really, I think throughout the years, I've kind of whittled down what is really the most important when it comes to, being prepared. So, like, you want to make sure that it's a good viewing environment, and by extension, a listening environment for your audience. I think the main thing is audio. I think if you have something annoying in your audio, like if you have, for instance, just like an air conditioner running in the back that might have like a high squeal, or if you have really unbalanced sound levels, like if your maximum volume is too high and then you yell suddenly, people who like, if a lot of times I'll be pretty quiet, and then if something crazy happens, I'll yell. And so I've had to make sure that I have like my maximum volume for my microphone, the max volume that can catch, lowered enough so that that people who have their headphones up or their volume up aren't then freaked out by a sudden screech or something like that. The other thing is, I think much less important is making sure that your camera's focused and that your gameplay video is good as well. If you are playing like a PC game and it gets choppy, people will not want to watch that. Not at all. What's really interesting, and because I suffered from this myself, I get really bad anxiety with annoying or repetitive noises that are annoying. And so I know that if I don't have my audio quality in check, then I'm going to lose viewers. And if I don't have my video quality in check, I'm going to lose a smaller amount, but I'm going to lose viewers from that too. So audio is always my number one priority. Video is my second priority. And pretty much everything falls in line after that.
It's
like
funny.
If I sorry, what was that?
Oh no, go ahead.
So if I if I play video games, if I play terribly, and I have a bad attitude about it, I used to think that would be the biggest thing to drive people away. But if I have the worst attitude, but I have a really crisp sound, I'm going to keep viewers because they're going to be there and they're going to be part of it. So really, audio and video are the main two concerns for me.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously for this interview, my main source of preparation was the audio. So it's making sure that this recording equipment was good, make sure my mic
there it
good.
is.
Just
there it is.
Test.
There it is. Exactly. Yep.
So it sounds like there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and you're not just playing games or just telling jokes or just interacting with audience. Describe the amount of multitasking going on while on air.
Oh man. Okay, so let's say I'm doing a competitive race. I've probably spent 4 to 5 days researching, practicing, adjusting all of the different things that I need to do. And in order to not have to add that to my list of multitasks, I have to have a specific set for exactly what I'm going to do for the race. I have to know exactly what my plan is. After that, I've got to make sure that all of my stream equipment, which is usually fine, is in working order. I don't have any issues with that. And so when it comes to the actual race, or the actual stream itself, I have to make sure that I'm paying as much attention to chat. And what I like to do is, if someone says hi, I like to say their name. I like to make sure that everyone is acknowledged, and that gets harder and harder. As I've had on my own, without people dropping more views to me, I've had over 150, 200 people coming in, and you'll have dozens of people chatting at the same time. And so you want to make sure that there's a good balance of both acknowledging them, but also not losing concentration in what you're trying to do. Because as much as people are going to watch a stream based on the personality of the person streaming, a lot of people also are going to watch because of how good you are at a game. And that's something you can't really get around. There are lots of streamers who are really terrible at video games, and that comes from just a massive amount of charisma. There are lots of streamers who are the opposite, who have no charisma, but incredible talent. And so I don't think that I'm up there at the very top of either. So I've got to make sure that I'm doing my best to, one, play as good as I possibly can, but also acknowledge the people and interact with people. People crave the interaction. When they watch streams, they really like feeling like they're part of it too. So I try to make sure I interact with absolutely everyone that chats, while also trying to concentrate on exactly what I'm doing.
Man,
those are the hardest parts.
Definitely. It sounds like a lot of heavy work. And with that heavy load, how does flexibility help with that?
So the stress of having to go and broadcast yourself being raw and live, it is more. I already knew it was going to be difficult, but it was more difficult than I ever thought. What? I'm sorry. What is your exact question again? I keep doing this. I just go off on a tangent.
That's okay. How does flexibility help with that heavy load?
That's right. So the fact that, like, I can wake up. I also have really terrible sleep habits, and I have really hilarious ADHD. And so my perception of time when it comes to getting ready to do something is so unbalanced that it is such a load off my shoulders knowing that people are expecting me around 1:30 p.m. If I show up at 1:30, cool. If I show up at 2, also cool. I'm not going to get yelled at by someone for being late. I'm not going to severely let someone down by missing an appointment. Being able to just show up with, a half hour, even more grace period is fantastic. Or if I sleep through my alarm, or if something happens, I just send a message to Discord, say, hey, I apologize. I can't do it right now. And that's fine. I don't lose followers. I don't lose viewers. I don't miss out on a paycheck. Being able to have the ultimate flexibility of deciding my own schedule, be as late as I need to or accidentally am, it's huge. And that is actually the number one thing that made me really want to pursue this. Being able to feel like I am really free to experience life however the hell I want to, knowing that what my audience and essentially what I can consider my clients, what they're expecting from me is such a small, I guess, punctuality agreement between us that, like, I don't have to be on time. I don't have to even be there every single day. And I'm not going to lose anything from it. I'm not going to lose my job. I'm not going to lose a paycheck. Like I said before, it is the best feeling, being able to just, wake up, get as much sleep as I need to, take off time for an emergency without having to worry about anything. It's the most freeing thing that I could possibly think of.
It sounds so liberating, and that's just really cool to hear. You mentioned earlier that you have people who are on both sides of the spectrum. Either you have no charisma and are good at games, or you have all the charisma and not good at games. And then there's people in the middle. My question regarding that is, describe the importance of having presentation skills while maintaining a human side during the job.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Yeah. I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for. I'm going to say that humans are fickle. People will say that they don't. Like, you can go into, like, a person's stream. There's a guy that he's a friend of mine. His name is Turismo Lester, which is a hilarious name. But he does have charisma. He has the charisma, but he doesn't use it because he has no microphone. He has no face camera. He streams raw gameplay of Gran Turismo. And before I was on the scene, I believe he was the most watched Gran Turismo streamer on all of Twitch. someone who doesn't even have a microphone, let alone a camera, and has to type within the chat to talk to people. He had a massive audience. I am going to go out and say that if he had a camera and a microphone, or either of those, his audience would have been increased. As much as you can attain success with a lower presentation value, I believe that it enhances, a good presentation enhances it no matter what. I hope that answered your question.
Oh yeah, that's a really interesting way to answer that particular question. So yeah, I mean, I was looking for really any answer that you could provide, since you're the one who's in this particular field. So I would say for this follow-up, in terms of you yourself, Cyrus, explain the methods to remove any feelings of being robotic during your work.
Oh yeah. So actually, watching my old streams, it was really funny how worried I was about absolutely everything. I did look robotic. I had too much of a filter on. I tried not to cuss. I tried not to say anything that might upset anyone at all. And I was, like most people are when they're first in front of a camera, I was just really stiff. I was here to play video games, and then I would try to talk and read chat whenever I could. And then I was so worried about my presentation that I was exactly that. I was robotic. And as time went on and I realized, I guess the nuances of the streaming community and what you can get away with while broadcasting yourself, how much of you can let out, it became liberating. I also had the issue of having a massive filter on from working at a martial arts studio and working with kids. And so there's a lot that I wasn't able to say. That also gave me more jokes and ideas of things to say without being, just cursing and being wild. But the funny thing is, that then made my tool set more robust, because after a while I realized that people are there to really interact with you, like on a personal social level. You might be broadcasting to 100 people, but every one of those individual people, to them it's just you and them, and then people talking on the side. And so it turned into just a normal social interaction, so I could be myself. And I've become more comfortable being myself the more I've gotten a positive response from it as well. I was really lucky to not have a whole bunch of negative issues at the beginning. I know a lot of people actually have really negative situations when it comes to streaming. People like to come in and be trolls. People come in and like to pick on people they think they can. I think my overall confidence in myself has kept people like that away, on top of the fact that now I just don't care. If anyone comes in, they don't like what I have to do, I know enough people do, and so they can go away. I don't care.
Dang, wow. I didn't even take the whole trolling thing into account for this particular career, because that's actually interesting. That's like the equivalent of how you have school bullies. I can only imagine it the in real life equivalent would be if a sports broadcaster were to have bullies outside the recording booth trying to knock on the door or something. But that's such an interesting case that you mentioned. That I didn't really take that into account. So moving on from that, there might be a time or two where your actual broadcast or a match that you're doing, or even watching in some cases, doesn't have a lot to offer viewers for various reasons. How do you find topics to discuss?
Yeah, so my brain is just constantly going. It's constantly firing random things. And so anytime that I've if there's boring gameplay, or if I'm stuck in a loading screen, and also there's not a lot of other people trying to help and provide more content to talk about, I just start saying whatever's on my mind. And that gets wild sometimes. I just honestly just don't care anymore, so I just say the first thing on my mind. I'll just start singing a random song that's stuck in my head. I'll ask a random question. I feel like a lot of people have random thoughts and ideas in their mind that they immediately dismiss, no, that's not worth talking about. Any thought that I have, I'll just throw it out there. And the funny thing is that I just love banter so much, and I love just talking about anything. I love making people laugh. It's like a challenge to me to see what kind of things I can get away with talking about. I'm trying to think of a really good example of something. Okay, that
was actually going to be my follow-up question too, so that's perfect.
I liked. All right, this is dark. I hope that's okay. But
as long as it's PG, as long as you don't say curse words, that's fine.
Perfect. okay, this might be too dark. You know what? I'm just gonna say this version of it. I randomly just get the most stupid questions or responses in my head to things people say, and I'll just say them. Like, if someone said that, you know what? No, I'm running through this in my head. This is a benefit of streaming for so long, where I can kind of think ahead and play out scenarios with what I was about to say. This is a little too weird.
If you don't feel comfortable sharing that, that's totally fine. We can proceed further.
Yeah, well, I
fine.
can't. I can no longer remember. Once again, for like the fifth time, I don't even remember what the original question is. But essentially, like I just like to say weird things, and you ask a weird enough question, enough people are going to throw in their answer to it, and you can just go from there.
That's totally funny, and that's totally fine. We can proceed further. That's totally fine. So, in this field, you work with a relatively large pool of people, as you mentioned before. Describe the collaborative skills it takes to get all on board to succeed.
I think it's awesome that you're saying collaborative skills. One of the biggest actually pitfalls that people run into is that people want to know how to stream, and so they look up advice on streaming, and then the first thing everyone sees is that you've got to network and you've got to collaborate. And people then go, oh, I've got to network and collaborate. And so they'll go, and then they'll talk to every single person they meet. Hey, you want to network? Hey, you want to collaborate? Hey, you want to network? What networking, collaborating really is chemistry between people. And collaborating on a project is usually not the thought of, we're streaming, we both want to stream, let us collaborate on this project of streaming together. And then you sit down and create a plan for it. Usually within streaming, collaborating is, this person, I vibe with this person, I like their content, so perhaps we can both enjoy producing that same content on the same level. So like, I know people who also stream the exact same game that I do, and so having them on my stream at the same time, so we're both talking with each other, we're both guesting on each other's streams, is something that is really a casual thing, because we're just playing video games with each other. We both happen to be broadcasting at the same time. So my collaboration efforts are really, who do I vibe with? Who do I like in the community? Let's both do what we do together, parallel or together, and let's see if it works out. I don't really seek out much collaboration because it feels fake, to be honest. And so I really, the main answer is I spend time with people I like, and that generates content itself.
And with that natural ability to be with people that you like, everybody wins at the end of the day. Everybody's able to profit. Everyone's able to grow their particular ventures or their brand, exactly. So that's wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing all this wonderful insight on the skills required to do such a job. And finally, I just wanted to discuss what your personal life is like while pursuing your work. Just have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
So I previously interviewed Dabier Snell, who was a curator for brands such as Disney Channel, and it was the Disney Channel, and what was the other one? It was Adidas. That's right. And also he did acting and actual broadcasting on TV and stuff. So his question was mainly for clients, but I guess I'll ask you, what do you do to help yourself manage a work-life balance?
Yeah, so once again, I'm just really, really, really lucky to have been given the opportunity by my wife, essentially. So we discussed at the beginning this whole plan, essentially an open-ended plan of what will the work look like. Is it going to represent, like, is the stream going to be my day job? And it turns out, yes, that's how we have to treat it. And so when I'm working on the stream or I'm in the stream itself, as much as it is just, it is fun. It is fun work, but it's still work. And so my wife respects the fact that it's my job. And so I get to spend as much time as I need to. But with that said, since I can decide my own schedule, then if she wants to do something, or if we want to have an activity, or if I need to do a social thing with my friends, then I get to do it. Like, it doesn't matter what day it is, where it is. If there's something I want to do in my personal life, I just get to do it. And so it's my personal life. The other thing is, we talked about, audio being the big priority for the stream itself. In order to make sure that the health of the stream is there, we also considered the fact that my personal life and my own mental health is going to be the most important thing. And so I put myself first. I put myself and my wife and my friends first. And essentially, we treat the stream like my job. But if there's anything that I need to do where I would need to cut into stream time, I just choose that, because it's always going to be more beneficial in the long run to keep my social life alive and to keep my mental health in top shape. So yeah, with this I get to focus. I don't just get to hope that my personal life can work around my schedule. It's the other way around. I make sure that my personal life is as healthy as possible, so that I can be a good husband to my wife who's supporting us, and that I can provide the best content freshly on the stream.
You know what's amazing? You probably answered like several questions that I had for you into one answer for that one. I was going to ask you about, the process of maintaining your mental health while conducting such a high stress level job, and you kind of mentioned it there. Yeah. And then also, I was going to ask about the boundaries that you set to help reach a good middle ground, and the methods that you take to make sure the boundaries aren't broken. But it just sounds like it's just, as you mentioned before, the liberation of having this type of field or this type of job. Like you're your own boss. You do whatever you want, and when you need time away from the job, you just take it away, and your clients essentially understand that that's going on. So I do want to ask you that you do work in an industry that requires lots of time away from people that maybe not so much your wife, because you live with her, but other people in your real life, whether it's siblings you might have, or other friends or other family members. How do you cope with this? So
like, again, I since I can essentially create my own schedule. I've always been a homebody, and so my friends and family are used to me being home anyways. And so, just being able to just drop it when I need to, or create a schedule so I can go and attend a social event, something like that, it's all part of the original plan. And I think that's one of the reasons it's working out so well. I didn't just make a plan for the stream. I made a whole life plan. And being a streamer essentially afforded me the opportunity to do just that. So yeah, I spend more time with friends and family than I ever have before, and it's easy. Honestly, it's really easy being able to just decide my own schedule.
That's amazing. And you really hit the nail on the head when it comes to the support that your wife gives and people in your personal life. I guess a follow-up for that would be, tell me what this does for you as you continue your career path.
So I want to still be able to be a stuntman, and I also do an activity called tricking, which is essentially, it's like breakdancing and martial arts combined. And so because of the fact, again, that I'm creating my schedule, and so I like to do flips and martial arts combined. And so at my age, in general, it would be really difficult to pursue that kind of thing in general. I'm 37 now. But because I have spent so much time in that industry as well, because of my ability to then decide a workout schedule on top of it, as well as having adequate nutrition, I'm still pushing, and I'm still trying to pursue greatness in that field as well. And so I've done it again. I forgot what the original question was.
That's fine.
I do this like every few minutes.
That's okay. It was just asking you what the support that you receive from your loved ones while you're at work does for you as you continue your career path.
So essentially every goal that I've wanted to hit, I'm able to pursue fully. Every bucket list item that I have left, I am able to go after them full force. Every one of them. As a man in his late 30s, and it's just the most liberating. I don't use this word lightly. I am blessed. I am the luckiest man alive. I truly believe it. I am pursuing every dream that I've ever had, and I've been able to look back and see that I've already checked off some of them. And so I'm essentially just this is allowing me to live the life that I've always wanted. And so it's just good. It's just all good right now.
I just love how you're clearly enthusiastic about this particular career path, and it's clearly bringing you so much joy into your life. So just going back to the mental health aspect, tell me about your favorite method of releasing that stress after an intense moment at work, such as a bad day on air, for example, or maybe like a bad session during a game.
Yeah, so that actually happens pretty frequently. Like I'm competing at a pretty high level in sim racing, and a lot of people are competing in that, and so I have lots of bad days when it comes to it. But honestly, just seeing the overall perspective and knowing that as soon as I shut it off and leave this room, then I do whatever the hell I want. In general, I'll just go and zone out for a minute, just lay down, and know that whatever it is that got me down is just such a small portion of all of the positive things that are happening with me right now. And so just, honestly, just the whole plan from the beginning, it's all part of it. Knowing that I just get to, as bad as the day was, I was just upset at playing a video game. And so then it just puts everything into perspective.
that's that's a really good way of looking at it, and then also like you're doing something that you love at the end of the day, so that kind of helps out quite a bit, I assume.
Exactly, absolutely.
That's amazing. So unfortunately, time has run out for this interview, but I'd like to thank you for being here with me today.
Yeah.
And now that our interview is complete, I'd like to take a moment to review a bit of what I've learned about you today. So it's very clear that many people and your particular interest influence your decisions to become a broadcaster. And I can also tell
Yeah.
that the skills that you've had to earn helped you out a lot. And the balance that you found for your personal life and your work helps you for your continued success. If I wanted to know anything else, would I be able to reach out to you at a later date?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Well, Cyrus, thank you so much for your time today, and have yourself a great day.
Thank you so much. You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.